Hello everyone, welcome to Real Talk with Real Pros. I'm your host, Tom Houghton. Joining me today is going to be Bill from Roma Homes. I'm super excited to welcome him to the show. If you're watching this live, let me know where you're watching from. So leave a note in the comments. Also, if you were joining us for Buildertrend Online Conference earlier today, let me know in the comments as well too. So thank you so much for tuning in. Let me just say hi to a couple people here. People joining right now, give me a thumbs up if you're having a great Wednesday. Hope you're having a great Wednesday. I'm having a great Wednesday. Lots going on. So Nashville, Tennessee is in the house. That's awesome. Thanks for tuning in. 1 second, we're going to be joined by Bill from Roma Homes. Let me see if I can get Bill on here real quick. Again, if you're just tuning in, welcome to Real Talk with Real Pros. Again, I'm Tom Houghton, joined by our friends at Roma Homes. Oh, there he is.
Hey there.
How's it going?
Going well. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for being on the show. So real quick, just to give everybody a quick introduction to yourself, why don't we just start at the top? Tell us a little bit about Roma Homes, about yourself, husband and wife team, right?
Yeah. It's me, my wife, and one project manager, and that's our company. It started quite a while ago. I bought my first house. I'm from Detroit. In Detroit when I was 18 years old. Me and my best friend from high school, and we fixed it up over the summer. Kind of knew we couldn't really get a good summer job and had to pay for school ourselves. So we fixed it up with a lot of help from our fathers and learned a lot of things along the way. And that kind of kicked off the real estate, construction, passion. Went to school, got a degree, but it was always kind of in the back of our heads. I've had a couple of different careers. I was a Division I lacrosse coach for a couple of years. And
wow.
When I met my fiance at the time, it's time to get a real job. So we found a job that brought us to Charlotte. And once we got to Charlotte, we started getting back into fixing up and flipping houses. And It started with our own house, a renovation, where we went through 3 contractors. And then when we bought our first investment property, which has always been our driving force, so if this was going to be an investment, something we did on the side, I went through 3 general contractors and said, all right, at the end of the day, I'm going to get my license. I can hire subs that don't show up. Like, I don't need to pay somebody a premium to handle this for me. So
yeah,
we did an addition and fell in love with it.
Awesome.
We said, let's do an addition. And then the next deal that kind of we found was an opportunity for urban infill here in Charlotte. It was a tear down, designed the house ourselves and built it. And it was just like, this is awesome. And we were doing it on the side for a few years and started to ramp up over time to where it's been full time now, almost 4 or 5 years full time with the building. But yeah, our team is just the 3 of us, and so far so good here in Charlotte.
Awesome. Well, I love the name, and I want to get to that in a second, but obviously you mentioned Charlotte. Just if you're tuning in right now, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. Obviously, right now you're in Charlotte, North Carolina. What's it like down there?
Charlotte's an anomaly. I mean, I think everyone's experiencing a pretty hot market right now. And our primary focus is we are spec builders. So we buy the land, build the house, and we look to sell them. We do custom homes, 1, maybe 2 per year, but it's got to be the right location, which you try to stay close to home. And the real estate is just, it's insane. We're finding a lot of people from New York and California are moving to Charlotte. I've talked to a couple of brokers that have had their best months ever in June during COVID.
Wow.
And surprisingly, Charlotte just passed San Francisco as the 15th largest city in the United States, which was shocking to me. And I've been here for over a decade, which is like, wow, I can't believe that growth is so fast. So far, so good. It's been interesting during COVID. Like, I think we're experiencing the same thing everybody else is. What's unique, though, North Carolina construction from day one was deemed essential. So our lives hasn't really been impacted quite that much. So that's a blessing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned the pandemic a little bit. I think I saw Blake Builders is on here too. I think they had a question for you regarding lumber shortage. Have you had any issues with acquiring wood or lumber for your projects?
My lumberyard that we deal with, they're kind of, I would say, smaller boutique. They did call us and say, hey, get your orders in now, mainly for pressure treated. We found that shortage quickly, and the price skyrocket. So we just put in a fence, and the price of the fence went up 30% from like 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Like, it was just shocking. So we are experiencing that a little bit. Fortunately, I'm finishing up a series of houses where we just started laying out lots for 4 more houses that we're going to start building. So I'm kind of in between, not having a big demand, but we're doing a deck on one of the houses that we did, and they were like, get your order in now. So I think it's surprising, and it's coming.
Yeah. And I can see, I think they just commented in here that they're seeing some of the same issues here in Nebraska because they're based in Lincoln. Shout out to Lincoln if you're watching, the rest of Lincoln. I know Blake Builders is watching, but they're seeing a 40% increase on lumber and supply, it looks like. So crazy stuff. You mentioned some of your projects in motion right now, and it sounds like maybe you're working on a new development. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So we finished up it was our first 2 houses that we did that got over the $1 million price range, and that's fun. It's like when you're designing. So our system, my wife and I, and when we sit down, we always look at the homes that we design. We design everything ourselves, finish everything ourselves, and obviously we're the builder too. It was fun with the $1 million price tag because you're like, ooh, that's cool, let's do that. That's cool, let's do that. So we're finishing up those, and we're going into a development which is actually in our neighborhood. I mean, I could walk from here. I'm at home right now. We could walk over there. It's 4 houses. It was land that we sent out some letters and met the homeowner who bought this land in this neighborhood, which is an up and coming, bought it like 30 or 40 years ago, had just been sitting on it, and worked with him through a rezoning process. And we've got 4 houses that we'll be putting up. Not quite to that price point, but it's still a pretty hefty price tag. That growth that has happened so fast has been surprising. Of a year over year, the increases in the price of land as well as the homes here has been fast. Growth. Yeah.
So let's I want to tug on this string here a little bit. You mentioned obviously your first over $1 million houses. What were some of the challenges that you faced with that you weren't expecting?
That's a good question. So like part of one of my immediate, and to be very honest with you, when I was excited to do this interview, and when I realized last week that I was following Matt Reisinger, you know how nervous I've been in the last week? I was like, that guy's been like my idol.
Yeah.
So when you get to that type of construction, it's are you doing everything the right way? Are you doing, and you do it for every house. But that price point, when it's your first, there's definitely a nerve I wasn't prepared for. But when we design the houses that we do, we always look at it and say, we have our check boxes. And because we are investor developers also, and that's our primary focus, is, well, if we can't sell it, could we rent it? And if we can't rent it, would we move into it? So that was a little nervous because it's a hefty price tag, right? So that's, but when we're designing these houses, we're always designing them with one person in mind. We look at this as an art form. It's not just our job. We don't just build houses. This is an art. We have built the same house before, and we found it to be pretty boring. And when you're designing these things, and it's really not just a high price point, it's any price point, are people going to like it? We have those conversations every night. We have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. We put them to bed. We look at our light fixtures and go, are people going to like this? But when you kind of hone in and say, we're looking for one person, we're looking for a special person that identifies with this house. We're not trying to appeal to the masses. There's a comfort with that. And so far, people have responded well, and we haven't had any of our properties sit on the market too long. So far, we're lucky in that regard.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. So you're a husband-wife team.
Yep.
What are some of the challenges that you face? Do you have to divvy up? How do you keep people in your lane? Staying with, you've got this on your to-do list. She's got that on her to-do list. How does that process work for you?
A lot of communication. And Buildertrend has been a godsend in that regard, to be honest. Not to just throw in the plug here, but so my wife's primary focus is the finishes, selections, and communicating that to our subcontractors. And the selection sheet, the selection option in Buildertrend has been, it keeps us organized. She gets mad when I call her and say, hey, what mirror is going on the 3rd story powder room? She'll say, it's in Buildertrend. And because, sure enough, pull it up, there it is. And now our project manager's gotten good. He goes there first before it picks up the phone. And so my wife is at home with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. That's the primary, that was our goal in moving into a family-oriented business of doing this, was to be able for her to be at home. We have, I think we have a pretty good work-life balance. It could always be better. Yeah. But
I think everyone's struggling with that right now, especially with this whole pandemic. A lot of people working from home and work have just kind of collided. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's been interesting, especially with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. But there's not that much school. Right? We're not missing that much stuff, but it's the little activities of that they're not doing. They're not going to their swim class or the preschool. But it wasn't that often. But now, after 5 months, even my 4-year-old's like, I want to go do something. Like, let's go. So yeah, it's been interesting.
So you mentioned you've been using Buildertrend. If you don't mind sharing with the audience, like, how long you've been using Buildertrend and what was the process of getting started in Buildertrend?
I'll tell you, it was after our first full year, full-time in real estate and construction. And we sat down, and my wife was doing the books at that time, and sat down to do our taxes. And you want to talk about challenge, that was difficult. Like, we're trying to get this together. We're putting in, unbelievable amount of hours with a newborn at the time, trying to get our books straight. When we finally learned, we found about Buildertrend. We saw it was kind of neat. And when we saw that function in terms of the budgets, what we could do with our accounts, our AP, and that was the light bulb. It was like, all right, we'll figure everything else out. And now we have a full-time bookkeeper who handles that for us. And she has it like down pat in terms of, and it's actually an interesting firm here who knew about Buildertrend before. Sorry, I'm swiping away a couple text messages.
Yeah.
Who knew about Buildertrend. They were familiar with it. And now we have our QuickBooks and our Buildertrend synced and talking to each other. Because Buildertrend for me is significantly more user-friendly. If you try to go into QuickBooks and figure out what you're spending on a job, I'm like, what is all this stuff? Like, how much did I spend on the roof on this house?
Right.
So that's been huge. And when our taxes are due, click a button, there you go. And it started with Buildertrend for sure.
That's awesome to hear. It's one of those things that people don't necessarily like to talk about or enjoy talking about it, because it's like the budget, which is not very of a appealing topic of discussion for most people, but it's a super crucial part of your business. Because if you don't know the numbers, if you don't know where you're at on your jobs, how do you know whether or not you're up or down or, and how do you make adjustments from that? So that's really smart that you implemented into the business, and you're working, it sounds like, with a local company there to help you out with that. That's really awesome.
Right. Yeah.
That local partnership.
They've been a godsend. The amount of time I used to spend writing checks and now all I have to do, I sent her the cost code in Buildertrend. I said, this is this sub, this job, this is the code. So we use, those 4-digit codes. She codes it how I ask it. She does everything. It gets QuickBooks going, and it's been awesome.
That's fantastic.
For sure.
Just want to give a quick shout out again. If you're just joining, thank you so much for watching Real Talk with Real Pros. I'm joined with Bill here from Roma Homes. They're based in Charlotte, North Carolina. So thanks so much for tuning in. If you've got a question for Bill, leave us a comment. Use that little question box too. We can do that too. Either way, just put it in there for the questions, and we'll get those questions answered. We'll be happy to do that. So one question that was on my mind, I brought it up at the beginning, and I told you I'd circle back to it, was the name Roma Homes. Also, I do want to talk about your logo a little bit as well, but let's start with the name. So give us the background on the name.
We went through a couple of versions of, as we knew when we made the decision as a couple that we eventually were going to start our own company, or what we were going to call this. And I always wanted it to be something that was meaningful, something that was significant. And my aunt, who recently passed away, is our family genealogist, my Aunt Priscilla. And so I'm of Greek descent. My grandparents are all Greek immigrants. My parents are first generation. And she was doing some searching, and my great-grandfather sailed from Greece to the United States on a ship called the Roma. And when I read that, I was like, perfect, that's the name. That was it. And it's a prideful thing. We put the shirt on, and we have our logo, and it's something reminds us who we are, where we come from, and humbling the sacrifice that they made coming here with nothing.
That's fantastic. You mentioned the logo a little bit. So your logo, it has, I think, some Greek characters in it, right? It has the omega symbol.
You got to Greek it up. The Greeks always got to Greek it up somehow.
Yeah.
And make sure you're dealing with a Greek. Yeah, I can. Here's the.
Oh, there you go. It's flipped, but.
Right. So what we did make sure that we put in was the Alpha Omega.
Yeah.
Which has lots of meaning. So that was the two letters there you go. So the A
is kind of
Roma, and then the O in the homes, that's Alpha Omega. And there's a faith-based aspect of it, which was, not to get into that here, I don't know if that's but it was, God said he was the Alpha and the Omega. I am everything. And I always kind of kept that with me. And I used to print Alpha Omega when I was in my high school, in my 20s. And this was always a goal of mine, was to be in real estate construction. And this is what I was doing full time. And that Alpha Omega was the reminder of what my goal was. Mm-hmm. So I'd write it down. I've painted it. I've had it. When I was 18, I wanted to get it tattooed. My mom wouldn't let me. But, thankfully, I didn't. And that was a reminder. So having it in the logo, it covers so many things. It's the Greek, it's the faith, and it's the reminder of what my goals are. What's our focus?
That's fantastic. I love that you have it there right front and center for you to be reminded of. I think sometimes, obviously, if you're just going in, day out, not thinking of something, you kind of lose track sometimes over time. And that's why this pandemic has been so eye-opening, I think, for most people, is it's all given us a little bit of time to pause and think about, are we doing things the most efficiently? Why are we doing the things that we're doing? And if you have got that locked in to yourself, I think that's going to be great, a good compass for you to guide yourself off of. So that's really cool. I really liked that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you noticing too.
Yeah. Well, it's the designer in me, the creative art in me I was like, oh, that's so cool that they have that built in there. So let's talk really quick about your customer process, because that's something I like to talk about with everybody, because I feel like everybody's got a unique approach to that. So how do you handle your customers? How are you dealing with them right now, obviously, with the whole pandemic? What's that look like for you and your team?
For us, because we are very, very selective when it comes to a custom home that we're going to build, number one is always going to be the location. It's me, my wife, our project manager, Nick, and it has to be pretty close to our house. We're comfortable enough with the work that we do and the product that we're okay being neighbors with the people that we build houses for. But with that's one of the big things, and it always has been. What's harder is also when you're going to sell a house. That's our primary customer. We're looking for someone who's going to buy one of our homes. And the biggest part that we've learned is when somebody comes to see one of our houses, and we normally sell them before we put them on the market, we're real early, we want to meet them. And we want to do a face-to-face. And that's been difficult with this. So we've done a few video chats. It's been a little bit more impersonal. But then once people are a little bit more comfortable, and we are in the South, and it has been a little bit more, let's be honest here, a little bit more relaxed, let's say.
Sure.
But we've been careful through construction. I said, this might be slow. Because especially early on, I was trying to stagger crews so that only the trim carpenter. Normally it's, schedule everybody, and you show up on a day when there's 80 vans on these job sites. You're like, that's like Christmas morning for a builder. Oh my God, this is awesome. we were trying to slow them down. Let's not get on top of each other, and let's be careful. So that slowed us down a little bit. So the communication, and honestly, that's what Buildertrend. We normally when we do custom, and then when we do sell a house, we give access. They have the homeowner portal, and they have access to the schedule, and we try to show that and show, hey, here's, gutters were scheduled for Tuesday. They're going out probably a week and a half, 2 weeks, or whatever the case may be. The customer retention in terms of Buildertrend, it separates you. There's no doubt about that. I mean, everybody's using Buildertrend now here, but how are you using it, and are you using it effectively? And we're constantly trying to get better from that perspective.
That's good. That's good. I love trying to improve. I'm always a big fan of learning. I feel like you can never stop learning. So I think that's a great attitude to have. Tell me about one of the ways, if you don't mind sharing, one of the ways that you've tried to learn Buildertrend more in your process of using it.
I'll tell you, one of the biggest ones after my first general liability workers' comp audit. And when I had to come up and the amount of money I was paying and the amount of time I was spending chasing people for certificates. If there was anybody out there that was debating, this is the reason for Buildertrend. It's the money that I spend monthly for the service. I've saved tenfold in terms of my audits. I've gotten refunds because we are so tight with those certificates, and you put the deadline. So that was like, we need to be experts at this, to the point where when we go, my bookkeeper goes to pay my subs, she gets that red flag that says insurance expired, and we don't pay that sub until we get an up-to-date certificate. So mastering that process for my business, worth every penny we spend on the monthly. There's no doubt about it.
That's fantastic to hear. Yeah, it's so crucial to keep track of those certificates, making sure that your liability is all squared away. Obviously you don't want to leave yourself to a point where you're exposing your business to any potential lawsuits or anything like that. So that's really important that you're doing that. And obviously it sounds like you got a good system in place, like you said, working as a team there. So that's awesome. Yeah.
When you pull up the Buildertrend, you pull up that software, and the auditors are like, "Oh, this is impressive." I'm like, "Okay, we're off to a good start."
You're like, "Thanks."
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Okay, so real quick, I want to talk about the Charlotte area a little bit more. Tell me kind of some trends that you're seeing in your neck of the woods. What do people like?
Yeah. Charlotte's been interesting because as we got in, and this is happening throughout. I was home in Detroit for a few weeks ago, and I was starting to see similar trends start to pop up. I think what's helped is the outside influence from New York and California. We're starting to see less of the modern farmhouse, which is a term I can't wait to not hear anymore. And we've built plenty of them, and the style is beautiful. It's popular. And the last few houses we've tried to do, they have a little bit of more of a modern feel, but not like the ultra modern where you're getting, slanty roofs and perfect boxes. The outside of the house might look a little bit more on the traditional side with some more sleek, more dimensions in terms of the architecture, less big corbels and that, those types of things, which we still like to put those in. You're just trying to make them a little bit more sleek. And on the inside, clean, simple. Obviously, everyone's seeing the return to gold and the return to white. No more neutrals. Yeah. So that's you see that you open up Pinterest, you're going to see that. Yeah. But the houses that are selling at a high price point are pushing the market for those neighborhoods. They have more of that up to date, that more modern feel, going away from the rustic, the farmhouse type feel, and that's definitely been a push here in the last 12 to 18 months, I think.
Awesome. We had a question from one of the viewers. I want to pull it up on the screen really quick. Let's see if this, it doesn't even show the whole question. Can you walk through, this is from Philip Dawson, can you walk through your estimate and bidding process and how you use Buildertrend in that aspect? I think it says in that aspect of your business.
You know what, that's such a great question. and it's something that we've been trying to get better at every single day. There's no doubt about it. What I love about Buildertrend is, and now that we have a pretty good sample size of projects in Buildertrend, if someone calls me for an addition, if they're interested in, because we do some small things like that from time to time, or somebody calls me to do a custom home. But more for us, we're evaluating if we're going to buy a piece of land and if we're going to build a house or two houses or whatever. So we have to have our budgets really tight up front. So we're at the point now where Buildertrend, using that budget sheet and creating that template out of that, based with that information, we then have taken almost a per square foot cost for each cost code item in Buildertrend. So erosion fence, everything depending on the size of the house. And it's been pretty accurate in terms of applying it to the next house that we build. Now, I'm more guilty of this than my wife, but I get big eyes when we go to fancy stores. I'm like, ooh, this is cool. Let's do this. So we've blown a budget or two. There's no doubt about it. When it's your pocket and it's your product, it's a little bit different, right? You can push that. Whereas if you're doing a custom, not always the case, right? So you have to be a little bit tighter. But really taking that budget sheet, applying everything, giving every item cost code, a per square foot item, and then being able to do, and we use two numbers. We use heated square footage and we use under roof. And depending on the difference in that, so if the difference between those two numbers is 500 square feet or less, we'll err on the lower side of our per square foot numbers. And if that number of the per under roof versus heated, if it's over 500 square feet, we go to the higher end of our per square foot range for those items to help us. Because obviously, if you build, I can't tell you how many times you got a set of plans that were, it's a 2,000 square foot house, but it's got a 3-car garage and 800 square feet of covered porch. It's like, this is a 5,000 square foot building.
Sure.
So you try to keep that in perspective. And with what we're doing, where you get paid, in essence, off of your heated square footage, you have to keep those numbers pretty tight.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the budget, that budget page or spreadsheet in Buildertrend has absolutely helped with that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think probably Philip, who asked the question, is probably happy to hear that as well. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to drop it in the comment box really quick. Otherwise, I figure we'd wrap up with the question that I typically ask all my guests, which is about food, because I love food and I think most people like to eat. So tell me, if I came to Charlotte, North Carolina, where would be a place that I would grab a bite to eat with you?
Well, we live in a neighborhood called Noda. And Noda is a kind of trendy. There's bars, restaurants that we can walk to. So we could pick a couple. Today, I'll tell you, my parents are visiting from Detroit, and they've got two. We had Cabo Fish Taco for lunch. Ooh. Which is a place we love. It's been on, whatever Food Network guy, the spiky hair guy.
Yeah.
That place. And then my wife and I's favorite go-to, if we're on a date night, it's still in our neighborhood in Noda, is Crepe Cellar. And I've actually never had a crepe there, but they have the best burger I've ever had. For sure.
So maybe next time we'll try the grapes,
We always say maybe I never do. She's a little bit more open to changes. Like,
gotcha.
I know it's a phenomenal burger, and we just got an email today that they're reopening tonight. So
Fun.
Maybe that's where we'll go. So.
There you go. Good stuff. Got to support the local businesses. So that's awesome. Yeah. Well, Bill, thank you so much for joining me on this talk of Real Talk with Real Pros. I really appreciate you sharing your experience with everyone. Again, if you're not following Roma Homes, give them a follow on social media here. They're doing some great stuff. You can check it out on their profile, so make sure you follow them on Instagram. And like I said last week, I'll be back next week talking to another Real Talk with Real Pros.
Thanks, man.
See ya.